Welcome to News from Down Home. That's a series I'm doing with news from Princess Anne, Somerset County, Maryland, where I consider my hometown. Um, and I'm back in reading the newspaper, looking at items in the newspaper from that time. It was the Marylander and Herald, and it was the paper of record until the 1980s. And I'm in October 24th, 1916 still. And these are events that are happening that are important to people because this is their version of Facebook and Instagram that we have today. So they talk about who's visiting who's sick, that kind of thing. So let's look at some of these happenings that are going on in October 24th, as reported in 1916. So Mr. Columbus Langford spent last week in Baltimore City. Mr. B.H. Dougherty spent the greater part of last week in Baltimore. Mrs. J. Henry Colburn, a very important name on Eastern Shore, of Chrisfield, visited Princess Anne on Tuesday. Mrs. Edward D. Young has returned home from a visit to friends in Philadelphia. And Mr. and Mrs. William Littell of New York were visitors in Princess Anne on last Tuesday. Mr. and Mrs. Marion L. Mills and little son of near Princess Anne spent Sunday with friends in Salisbury. Messrs. George H. Massey and his brother Gordon Massey of near Marion spent last Tuesday in this town. Now let's look at the marriage licenses because these names are important. I'd like to know if you know any of these, the descendants of any of these people, if any of these names ring a bell, if you're from the area. Um, there was they divide them between white and colored. So colored, before Martin Luther King coined this phrase, as I think he coined it, people of color, there was a phrase that had some negative connotations, colored people in the United States, and it just spoke of racism and the two-tier society. So they divided the people, the marriage licenses, into white and colored. White included Harvey A. Derby, 23, and Lucy E. McDaniel, 20, both of Kingston. Stuart Young, 27, of Onancock, Virginia, and Carrie Hinman, 21, of Lemont, Virginia. And then colored included Henry Bailey, 23, of Mount Vernon, and Sarah Jane Barclay, 18, of Somerset County. Joseph Maddox, 22, and Mattie Jones, 17, both of Kingston. So these are some interesting events, I think. Plus, they noted that they found discovered oil on the Holloway farm, um, which is near Salisbury. So anyway, that's news from the, the the newspaper at the time, October 24th, 1916. Now, a notable building on the National Register of Historic Places was St. John's Methodist Episcopal Church and Joshua Thomas Chapel. Now, these are located at Deal Island, Somerset County, Maryland. The complex consists of St. John's Methodist Episcopal Church, which is an 1879 frame Gothic building, the Joshua Thomas Chapel, an 1850 Greek Revival frame structure, and the surrounding cemetery with 19th and 20th century burials and markers. The church features a three-story bell tower. Now, the chapel is the oldest site in Somerset County in continuous use for Methodist meetings, which began in tents in 1828. And it was placed on the Register of Historic Places, the National Register of Historic Places, in 1990. So I thought that was interesting. Now, um, it's Methodism in Somerset County has deep roots, um, and architecturally, the Joshua Thomas Chapel, built in 1850, is supposedly the finest example of Greek Revival churches built in the county in the mid 19th century. Only two examples survive. The other church I've already talked about, St. Mark's Episcopal Church near Kingston, is smaller in scale and almost devoid of decoration. So St. Mark's appears to be closer to typical of what was built when Joshua Thomas, but then Joshua Thomas is. So St. John's Church was built in 1879, is one of the earliest examples of the more complexly designed and decorated churches being built in Somerset in the last quarter of the century. So this is an important building, and I thank you for watching this. I enjoy doing this. I'm learning things about my hometown that I did not know when I was growing up. It wasn't, I don't know if my teachers knew. I don't know why it wasn't taught in elementary school, why we weren't taught about where we lived, more about, more detail should have been given to us about the great history that's around Somerset County. And I hope you go back and watch previous News from Down Home videos. I have a lot more to say. Thank you.